বাংলা আমি তোমায় ভালোবাসি
December the 9th was a day of blue skies and warm sunshine in New Delhi as the flag of the Bangladesh People's Republic crept up to the top of the masthead at the new premises of its mission in New Delhi.
That was the voice of the legendary star of broadcasting, Melville Demellow, chronicling the birth of a nation over All India Radio's national hookup on December 11th, 1971.
Over the preceding 9 months, Melville's was just one of the many voices that kept vigil over the airwaves as war clouds gathered over the Ganga and the Padma. And they came together in a confluence of blood, sweat and tears.
Upen Tarafdar couldn't go home after duty that night. The newsman from All India Radio Calcutta was whisked away to an undisclosed destination by the Border Security Force, along with a few select journalists. At the border, they were asked to alight from the car and walk for a distance. As the darkness slowly thinned into dawn, they reached an open area. A few people were around, some with rifles, some with machine guns. At one side, a dais had been put up. Some festoons were hung as decoration. In a while, the mystery cleared. In the absence of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the provisional government of Bangladesh was to take oath.
Standing on the soil of East Pakistan in a mango grove, Upen Tarafdar recorded the event of 17th April 1971 to carry the tidings over the air to the beleaguered people of East Pakistan and offer them hope.
Janab Khandakar Mushtaq Ahmad Shaif, Pararashtramantra. Janab Mansur Ali Shaif, Unnatama Mantri. Janab Kamruzzaman Shaif, Unnatama Mantri.
That was 50 years ago. But for Ratnasen, a seasoned broadcaster from AIR Calcutta, the memories are vivid.
Because of its proximity, Calcutta was at the centre of frenzied wartime activities, with the Calcutta station of All India Radio rising to the occasion and playing a very critical role. Announcements and news bulletins were broadcast round the clock. Every night, Debdulal Bandopadhyay, senior Bengali newsreader, would keep his listeners informed of the events unfolding in Dhaka and the other major cities. His superb interpretation of Shangbad Porikrama, the stirring scripts written by Parthoghosh Sen, the assistant editor, moved listeners to tears. The spirit of patriotic zeal heightened with every word written and spoken.
ভারত বাংলাদেশ মিত্রবাহিনীর দুর্বার আক্রমণের সামনে চুরমার হয়ে যেতে লাগলো জঙ্গি শাহীর সমস্ত প্রতিরোধ। পাকিস্তানি সেনাবাহিনীর দুর্ভেদ্য দুর্গ যশোরের পতন ঘটল। উল্লাসে ফেটে পড়লেন জনতা। একের পর এক খবর আসতে লাগলো জয়ের পর জয়ের।
For nearly a month in July to August 1971, Melville Demellow, chief producer, English Features, and his production team travelled along with the BSF in their jeeps from Calcutta to Agartala along the border, making frequent forays into Bangladesh with the help of the Muktibahini. The documentary series, culled out of a total of almost 100 tapes, was titled Refugee, the Agony and the Resolve.
It also symbolizes 9.5 million people who were driven into refugee camps to die of malnutrition or from epidemics. Out of the wreckage of those dark weeks that followed March 25th, the machinery of state rallied together and the liberation forces of Bangladesh were born. Thus began the resolve of a courageous people to fight back and banish the foreigner from Bangladesh soil.
Ishwar Lal Bhatia, then personal assistant to Melville Demellow, remembers one Pakistani diplomat from East Pakistan coming over to Broadcasting House soon after the broadcast of the programs.
He pestered me for a meeting with Mr. Demellow,
shares Ishwar Lal Bhatia in an email.
While in his room, the Bengali diplomat went round to touch Melville's feet. He related that he had been confused whether to defect to Bangladesh, and the radio program, which he heard on his car radio stopping at the Sevanagar railway signal, helped him make the switch.
কিন্তু আর আমার বুকের উপর গুলি চালাবার চেষ্টা করো না। 7 কোটি মানুষকে তাবা রাখতে পারবো না। আমরা যখন মরতে শিখেছি তখন কেউ আমাদের দমাতে পারবে না। মনে রাখবা।
Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's fiery speeches and marching songs of the Muktibahini rang loud and clear from a makeshift underground radio station, the Shadhin Bangla Bitar Kendro, which was bombed out of Chittagong by the Pakistani forces and ultimately found a place in Calcutta, from where they broadcast in secret. A one-room radio station from where patriotic programs were fed to All India Radio Calcutta, who added their bandwidth to the emotions and reached people across Bangladesh and across to countries that cared.
আমি প্রধানমন্ত্রিত্ব চাই না, আমরা দেশের মানুষের অধিকার চাই।
বিশ্বকবির সোনার বাংলা, নজরুলের বাংলাদেশ, জীবনানন্দের রূপসী বাংলা, রূপের যে তার নেই কো শেষ বাংলাদেশ।
The voice of Debdulal Bandopadhyay rent the air, speaking for and on behalf of Bangladesh. The content would be gathered from the mushrooming refugee camps, frequently visited by the news unit crew of Kolkata, ably led by D.C. Bhomik. A shared language and culture helped them feel the pulse of a people in peril.
Akashvani Kolkata, সংবাদ বিচিত্রা।
In Bangladesh, people would huddle together after sunset to listen to the radio, their only connection to the outside world. Professor Muntasir Mamun, who holds the Bangabandhu chair in Dhaka University, feels radio played a seminal role in 1971.
Bangladesh was divided into 11 sectors to fight the war. I think these 11 sectors was one sector, and Shadhin Bangla, Betar Kendro, and Akashvani and BBC is number 2 sector, which fought in the Liberation War. All India Radio, but particularly Akashvani Kolkata, had a tremendous influence because of its language. News commentary by Debdulal Bandopadhyay was very, very, very popular. I think in 1971, almost every Bengali used to listen to Debdulal's commentary. We had Shadhin Bangla Betar Kendro, also located in Calcutta, but we used to tell that it was located in Muktijuddho. They had limited source, but they had tremendous influence on Bengalis. They broadcasted features, talk show, and music, which had a tremendous effect on the Bengalis who were in the refugee camp or in the front, war front, or living inside Bangladesh. I remember in Bangladesh, after dusk, we used to go other places only to listen Shadhin Bangla Betar Kendro. You see, in Bangladesh, near Bogura or some other places, people used to meet and listen to BBC, and that bazaar is known as BBC Bazaar. So BBC was also very popular, and people who knew English used to listen to English version of the BBC and Radio Australia.
শোনো একটি মুজিবরের থেকে লক্ষ মুজিবরের কণ্ঠস্বরের ধ্বনি প্রতিধ্বনি আকাশে বাতাসে ওঠে রনি। বাংলাদেশ আমার বাংলাদেশ, বাংলাদেশ
That was the time when our diplomatic efforts needed to be bolstered through radio in influencing public opinion the world over, and the External Services Division of All India Radio rose to the challenge.
Broadcasting news commentaries, analysis, and also programs based on the press review of editorial comments from all over the world. So these are the programs which were being broadcast, targeted to various regions of the world. Our broadcasts were made in English as well as 15 other foreign languages. External Services Division then, through its flagship service, the Urdu service, which is very popular in Pakistan, was also trying to reach out to the saner public opinion inside Pakistan and also in the West Asia region, where Pakistan had traditionally been finding its support during the Bangladesh War. And that was the time when the Cold War was also playing its role, because United States had moved its 7th Fleet into the Indian Ocean region to arm twist India.
That was Amlan Mojumdar, former head of the External Services Division. Radio Pakistan launched a barrage of propaganda accusing India of interference in internal matters, stressing that all was normal in East Pakistan. That last myth was shattered on 15th August when the international media flashed the news that in a synchronized attack in the early hours, 4 East Pakistan ports of Chittagong, Chandpur, Narayanganj and Mongla were devastated. This was one of the most successful naval operations in the annals of war history. Muktibahini commandos, trained and supported by the Indian Navy, had executed a daring mission. Commodore Abdul Wahid Chaudhry of the Bangladeshi Navy looks back to that day when he was the leader of the commando unit that was sent to Chittagong. Apart from the standard supplies, each group leader was given a transistor radio. He was also familiarized with 2 songs that were to be played at a given time and on a given frequency from the Calcutta station of All India Radio. The broadcast of the songs would act as signals for the commando leaders.
The 2 songs were, first song, Pankaj Mullik's Ami Tomaye Shuniyechilem Joto Gaan. The meaning of that first signal, 48 hours, warning signal. So this is one. And the same song will be repeated in the evening again. Same frequency, 6 megahertz at 6 o'clock. Second song, Amar Putul Ajke Jabe Shushur Bari. This song will give the meaning to understand it is 24 hours, means action signal. And the first one came on 30th August in the morning, again in the evening. And number 2 song, Amar Putul Ajke Jabe Shushur Bari. In the morning I heard it, and in the evening it will be repeated. That means there is no doubt at all.
আমার পুতুল আজকে প্রথম যাবে শ্বশুর বাড়ি পালকি চেপে বরের সাথে আনন্দ যে ভারী
14th night, the whole day since morning it was drizzling, it did not stop. And in the evening when the time came 11:30 to 11:45, I went on the other side of the river. It was more than almost 10 feet down. I had to dive and scratch the ships so that I can put my limpet mine of 5 kg weight. This Kornofuli River is one of the most dangerous rivers, ports, because its underwater current is not less than 6 to 8 knots. We did not fear whatever may be the situation, we will go. That was the determination.
On December 3rd, the Pakistan Air Force launched preemptive strikes on Indian airfields. One fateful night soon after, Parthoghosh, veteran broadcaster of the Calcutta station of All India Radio, reported for duty to find the office building surrounded by army personnel.
I entered and was thunderstruck. Sitting at the desk of the duty officer was an army officer from Fort William. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "No questions, just do as you're told." I was told to go to the continuity booth studio and follow orders. There was another army officer there. He told me I had to play a particular record at the stroke of 10. No station identification, no announcements, just the song. He looked at his watch and at the appointed time signaled with his 3 fingers, 3, 2, 1, go. I put the fader up. The song was on air. After it got over, I was told it had to be repeated. The song was Mayavati Megelo Tondra. At the end of the song, he said, "Okay, off." We stepped out of the continuity booth.
গানটা পুরো বাজলো তারপরে ওকে অফ আমরা কন্টিনিউটি বুথ থেকে বেরিয়ে এলাম বাইরে এলাম
মায়াবতী মেঘেলো তন্দ্রা.
Parthoghosh would learn later that by playing that record twice, a signal had been conveyed to the Indian troops to march into Jessore in East Pakistan. The next day's newspapers reported the battle for Jessore. Radio would become a part of that story.
Sometimes a mistake in a broadcast can help change the course of a battle. The Indian Army took advantage of a historic error by the British Broadcasting Corporation. Major General Ian Cardozo, who was in the thick of the Battle of Sylhet, calls it the Beeb's best broadcast.
The British Broadcasting Corporation was a very famous and reliable corporation broadcasting news, and everybody listened to them and believed that whatever they said was true. Unfortunately for Pakistan, the British foreign correspondent made the mistake of saying that it was a brigade of Gurkhas which landed at Sylhet, whereas it was only an understrength battalion. Now, when the CO, commanding officer Lieutenant Colonel Harulikar, heard this, he decided that let us use this mistake by a radio broadcast to fool the enemy that we were actually a brigade, although we were only a very understrength battalion. He decided to redeploy the battalion to simulate the deployment of a brigade. Now, a battalion in full strength is about 1,000 men. A brigade in full strength is about 3,000 men and more. So, the Pakistanis now, who were also listening to the broadcast, and we knew that they were listening, assumed that a strength of over 3,000 Gurkhas had landed at Sylhet. So, redeploying the battalion, using this broadcast, put the enemy off. It's not that this broadcast was the only factor which helped the victory at Sylhet. No, the battalion fought a very hard battle for 9 days and 9 nights with shortage of food, water and ammunition. But ultimately it prevailed. It brings to mind a saying by Desmond Hayde, who proved what he said in the Battle of Dogra, and we had to prove it at the Battle of Sylhet, that battles are won or lost in the mind before they are won or lost on the ground.
Major General Ian Cardozo has a dramatic story to share about what he calls the last straw for Pakistan. How Lieutenant General J.F.R. Jacob homed in on a radio interception from the governor's house at Dhaka. A high-level meeting would take place there on December 14th, where the Pakistani civilian government would strategize for a ceasefire and not a surrender. An audacious plan was put together to be executed in a very small window by Lieutenant General J.F.R. Jacob with the help of the Eastern Air Command at Shillong.
Quickly, Eastern Command informed Air Headquarters at Shillong. Squadrons at Hashimara and Guwahati were warned. The pilots, who had no knowledge of what was going to happen, looked for a map because they did not know where the governor's house was. But there was no map. There was only a Burma Shell tourist map, which they looked at and were able to understand somewhere where the location was. Now, by this time, when the aircraft flew over governor's house, the people of Dhaka were all on their rooftops and hanging out of their windows, looking at the strange spectacle of Indian IAF aircraft buzzing around governor's house. And they, to their astonishment, found that here these aircraft were targeting the governor's house, and they were the precision bombing, the precision attack, which targeted only the conference room before the conference was held, pushed the governor into running away from the governor's house and putting in his resignation and submitting to a surrender rather than a ceasefire.
A young program executive of All India Radio Guwahati would be chosen to cover this thrilling mission. V. Thiruvengadam, retired station director of All India Radio Chennai, remembers being summoned to the station director's office that December 14 to be introduced to the defense PRO, O.P. Duggal of the Indian Air Force.
I was to go with him to cover an important MiG-21 mission for immediate broadcast. We left soon after and reached the base in about an hour, where I was stunned beyond belief to see a marvel of a setup. Station Commander Mansukani greeted us with extraordinary charm and warmth and introduced the 4 flight lieutenants who flew the MiG-21 for strafing enemy strategic spots well into the then East Pakistan. I saw in utter awe 3 such sorties complete their mission successfully. The meticulous preparation of the unit were to be seen, to be believed. They were alert but not tense. I recorded the voice of all the officers who spoke with enormous pride and fervor on this mission. The last and the most important of the day's mission was carried out in the afternoon as the highlight of the day's work. They had pinpointedly bombed the 4 corners of a strategic spot that signaled the start of surrender of the enemy. After joining the modest celebrations in the camp, I returned to the studios of All India Radio Guwahati in the company of Mr. O.P. Duggal.
Ratnasen had joined the Yuvavani service of AIR Calcutta as an announcer just after college.
Amidst the war hysteria, that December afternoon in 1971, just before I was to read the weather bulletin in Studio 2, the door opened and in walked the station director, Dilip Sengupta, along with 3 army personnel from the Eastern Command headquarters. A typed sheet was thrust in front of me and I was told to read it, not knowing what it was all about and without rehearsal. My 2 senior colleagues, Gauri and Parthoghosh, gave me sympathetic glances, seeing my nervousness. The title read, General Sam Manikshaw's ultimatum to General Niazi of the Pakistan Army to surrender immediately. As I began reading it, the seriousness of the ultimatum struck me with each line. I was gripped by both anger and empathy. Anger at the ruthlessness of the Pakistan Army and empathy for the masses fighting for their freedom. By the time I reached the end of the page, I was trembling and charged, overwhelmed by pain and anguish. Had I done justice to the strongly worded message on behalf of General Manekshaw? That day, the ultimatum was recorded in my voice and broadcast for the next 10 days. It was the most unforgettable moment in my long association with All India Radio. Perhaps a turning point?
Brigadier Behram Pantaki, a former aide-de-camp to Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw, analyzes the Army Chief's radio broadcasts and their strategic significance.
Military historians all over the world have appreciated and have marveled at the military minds that India had at that time. Ground situation on 10th of December was that Dhaka, capital of then East Pakistan, was being surrounded and was being approached by ground forces of the Indian Army. And the Army Chief, with his military acumen, assessed the situation and felt that it was a matter of days before Dhaka garrison would surrender. At this stage, he played a very strategic card. He played on the hearts and minds of soldiers of Pakistan Army who were fighting in East Pakistan. He told them that, look, ground situation is very poor. You are being surrounded from all sides. Please do not expect any help from your own general headquarters sitting miles away from you, nor any help coming from foreign nations who have promised. Then he said that, wouldn't you like to go back home and be with your family, with your wife, with your children, with your parents? And he says, if you give up arms and if you surrender, I promise you, you will be treated as per the Geneva Convention and you will be honorably repatriated. And that was the message, and it played very well.
Printed pamphlets carrying the army chief's message were airdropped over almost the entire province, translated into Urdu, Pashto, Punjabi and Bengali. Sayyid Badrul Hasan, an independent journalist and author of biographies of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and the wartime Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Tajuddin Ahmed, remembers the pamphlets being dropped by Indian Air Force planes. He was all of 16 then and an avid radio listener.
We were very curious as to what those leaflets contained. These leaflets that were being dropped from Indian planes, one of them, fortunately, they drifted down to our compound at our residence in Dhaka. And I just picked it up. It was in Bengali. It was an instruction from General S.H.F.J. Manekshaw to the Pakistani army to surrender. Meanwhile, we kept listening to the radio, All India Radio. It was exciting to know that the Indian army and the Bangladesh Muktibahini, they were coming closer to Dhaka to liberate the country. And that gave us an idea that the rest of the country was being liberated or had already been liberated. So on the 16th of December, I again switched on the radio, again All India Radio, and there was Mrs. Gandhi. I still remember her, that very clear, transparent voice, that very confident voice of the Indian Prime Minister, who has done so much to help us. She and her government had helped the 10 million Bengalis who had taken refuge in India, had given us moral and material support. Here she was telling the Indian Parliament, Dhaka is now the free capital of a free Bangladesh.
The West Pakistan forces have unconditionally surrendered in Bangladesh. Dhaka is now the free capital of a free country. The instrument of surrender was signed in Dhaka at 16:31 hours Indian Standard Time by Lieutenant General A.A.K. Niazi on behalf of the Pakistan Eastern Command.
বিজয় নিশান উড়ছে ওই বিজয় নিশান উড়ছে ওই খুশির হাওয়ায় ওই উড়ছে 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 বাংলার ঘরে ঘরে বাংলার ঘরে ঘরে মুক্তির আলোয় ঝরছে মুক্তির আলোয় ঝরছে
Surajitsen, chief newsreader with the News Services Division of All India Radio, volunteered to be a war correspondent. He was the first foreign correspondent to reach Dhaka on 16th December. He can be seen in that abiding image of the war, crouching beside Lieutenant General Arora and Lieutenant General Niazi, with not even a chair available, microphone in hand, ready to report the momentous occasion. Hear him tell you of his experience of getting to the spot. A true broadcaster, nothing could stop him.
I was in Calcutta when they flew me from here and they dropped me, find your way. And I was stuck. And I said, I want to see the general. Then they said, there's no plane going. This is only an ammunition plane. And that'll be going tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock. You've got to get in the plane. And that's how I went with an ammunition plane. No seat, nothing. But all the ammunition being taken to Bangladesh at the time. It was a thrill, the excitement to know what it is like.
Hello, Calcutta for Dhaka. I am reading back the message. Are you ready to receive me? Over. Lieutenant General Niazi to General Sam Manekshaw, Chief of Army Staff, India. Roger, so I say that...
But could the army chief rest on his laurels? He had to visit military hospitals and boost the morale of the wounded and the overstretched hospital staff. Close on his heels followed All India Radio's tireless soldier broadcasters.
We bring you a clip from Melville Demellow's documentary, The Battle for Chumb.
It was heartwarming to watch General Manekshaw, the Chief of Army Staff, bring a word of cheer to his wounded Jawans who have just returned from Chamb and are now in a military hospital in New Delhi.
ठीक है, कौन सी यूनिट है तेरी? फोर जाट। चम में लड़ाई किया, बहुत दुश्मन को मारा, शाबाश, जल्दी जल्दी तगड़ा हो जा, फिर जब मौका मिलूगा। कहाँ का रहने वाला तू? मेरठ का साहब। मेरठ का, शाबाश। क्या हो गया? हाँ, गोली लग गया? कितनी? मुझे तो पहले 9 लगी थी, मैं भी देख तगड़ा हो गया, चीफ बन गया, तू भी बन जाएगा, शाबाश। वो सब भागे हैं अभी, तूने लड़ा तो वो लोग भाग रहे हैं, शाबाश, जल्दी जल्दी तगड़ा हो जा, फिर गोली चलाएंगे, शाबाश। केड़ा जिला तेरा? होशियारपुर। केड़ी यूनिट? हाँ, शाबाश।
Program staff were tasked with recording messages from the more than 90,000 Pakistani prisoners of war from various camps for onward transmission, so that their families could hear that they were alive and well. Over to V. Thiruvengadam.
Hundreds of prisoners of war had been brought to the specially installed camps in the area. I was asked to record the mandatory messages of POWs to be conveyed to their families back home. The recording went on for 2 days. It was a 1-minute message, pre-prepared and printed. The POW would identify himself, address his family, and express the hope, God willing, he would meet them soon. There was a Urdu-knowing officer to ensure no change was made. The recordings were rushed to Delhi for onward transmission for broadcast purposes. The entire exercise was carried out as per the Geneva Convention.
Radio had helped in the birth of a nation.
A nation is born, and one day the legions of refugees will begin the long trek back to lovely Bangladesh and try to remake their shattered lives in a shattered country. Behind them in India, they will leave millions of huts which have been home and refuge to them during their long, painful exile. It will take a long, long time to restore their faith and remake their lives. But freedom is never obtained easily, and from the blood-soaked earth of Bangladesh and its reddened rivers, a new nation will arise, and a new era will dawn for the people of Bangladesh.
আমার সোনা বাংলা আমি তোমায় ভালোবাসি
বিজয় নিশান উড়ছে ওই বিজয় নিশান
Bulbul Mohalanubish was a young artist of the Shadhin Bangla Bitar Kendra. As the surrender ceremony began in Dhaka, her voice had rung out from the studio at Calcutta. After 50 years, she sings for us again. The victory song.
মুক্তির আলোয় ঝরছে মুক্তির আলোয় ঝরছে বিজয় নিশান উড়ছে ওই খুশির হাওয়ায় ওই উড়ছে 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 বাংলার ঘরে ঘরে বিজয় নিশান উড়ছে ও